are. I hope your troubles are few. All my good wishes go with you tonight. I've been in love like you. You be brave, young lovers, and follow your star. Brave and faithful and true, and cling very close to each other.
Welcome back. I'm Michael Ray. You're listening to thought-provoking talk on Dresser After Dark.
How it feels to have wings on your heels and to fly down the street in a trance. You fly down that street on the chance that you'll meet, and you meet, not by chance. Don't cry, young lover.
From Samuel Huntington's highly controversial Who Are We to the urgent appeal of Naomi Wolf's The End of America, Americans are increasingly reflecting on questions of democracy, multiculturalism, and national identity. Yet such debates take place largely at the levels of elites, leaving out ordinary American citizens who have much to offer about the lived reality behind the phrase, I am an American. Cynthia Weber with us. She is the author of I Am an American, Filming of Fear of Indifference, and it's a memoir. Cynthia, hi, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks very much.
Oh, and thank you so much for being here. What a fascinating topic. I think what we really have at this stage of the game, post 9/11, and I've been on this planet for a lot of years now, and today, more than any other time in our history, the definition of what is an American cannot be, it just can't be spelled out in such a way that everybody has an understanding. So let's start from scratch, Cynthia, and let's say, where was it for you that you saw this problem? What did you do? What caused you to put it to pen?
Well, let's start with what it actually is supposed to mean to be an American, because
Sure.
That's the kind of problem that I think about a lot as a U.S. citizen who's lived out of the United States for at least 10 years. And, you know, what I was taught in school, that what it means to be an American, a U.S. American, is that everybody enjoys the inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that we all enjoy freedom and equality under the law, and that we all get to live our lives in the context of the American melting pot, right, where what that means is that our individual differences of race or religion or national origin melt away when we mix in with other U.S. citizens because we're all U.S. citizens. And so, you know, those are the kinds of ideals that we hold on to. And what sort of inspired me to think about those more deeply was not just only living abroad, but when I came back to the United States shortly after September 11, I was just outside of New York, and I was at a funeral for a family member. And as I was in her home, the television was on, and I was watching this public service announcement that came on the television. It was the very famous I Am an American public service announcement. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. But what it is U.S. citizens of various ages, races, and religions just sort of looking directly into the camera and saying, I am an American. And what this public service announcement was doing was celebrating this very melting pot ideal that I was talking about, and celebrating how the United States is a tolerant nation. And it even ends with the U.S. motto, E pluribus unum, or, you know, out of one, many, by which the makers of the ad said that what they meant was, you know, out of many different kinds of U.S. Americans, we are just one unified nation. And, you know, certainly because I was at a funeral and because this was a very moving time for the country just after 9/11, I was very moved by this advertisement. I thought it was very well done. But on the other hand, I was quite worried about it because on the one hand, I sort of thought it protested a little bit too much, that what it was doing was reminding U.S. citizens of who we are as U.S. Americans, but reminding U.S. citizens of this to be tolerant because there was a concern that there would be a backlash against different U.S. Americans in the wake of September 11. And actually, Michael, the subtitle of the book is Filming the Fear of Difference, not filming the fear of indifference.
Me.
Okay, it was that fear of difference, and the press release is wrong, so it's not your mistake. But it was that fear of difference that had me wondering, you know, who are going to be these U.S. citizens who may find themselves to be deemed to be too different, so that they don't actually melt into this one unified nation. And that's what inspired me to go around and talk to U.S. citizens about their experiences.
Let me come at this from a different perspective. Cynthia, I was born in the early 40s, and so I was brought up in the 50s. John Wayne is still my hero. Okay. But that said, I'm a former Marine. I went through boot camp in 1960. I'll give you what my personal definition of an American is, because I'm an American. I love my country. I say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I will sing the national anthem. I happen to be Jewish, but I celebrate Christmas with all the friends that I've had all of my life. We've had trees. We've done everything that there is possible to do. What I am starting to see within the multiculturalism, if I can get the word out, what I'm starting to see is people coming from other countries who are running from those countries because they're being killed, they're being tortured, they're being taken advantage of, and they run here for everything that you just said that we can have, and then they try to make this what they ran away from. And I really believe when it comes down to it, I've watched ads on television. If you're a particular ethnicity or gender or something, if you open a mouth and you say something, they're going to come down on you. If you're a certain ethnicity, a gender or something, you can say anything you want to say, because if you say anything against it, you're a racist, you're this and you're that, you're whatever. I think that in and of itself has stopped that melting pot that you're talking about. It was a melting pot at one time. When somebody came here, they became an American. And, of course, you can have your culture and all of your history at home. There's one language here. There is one set of values and rules. And if you're going to come in here, follow it, because you can do anything that you want to do here. You can make any kind of money you want to make here. You can be in any kind of a relationship that you want to be in here. But I think the problem was when we lost the definition and we were so worried about people being intolerant that we killed ourselves with it.
Well, I mean, you make a lot of points there, and I think there are a lot of points to make in response. I mean, this idea that people came to the United States or came to America and the Americas, and then and brought with them what they left behind. I mean, that's actually the tradition of the United States, certainly, and it's a tradition of immigration. That when you move from one place, you might be trying to escape persecution, but you're doing that so you can live your life as you want to live it. I mean, you think about the Pilgrims and their search for religious freedom and why they came to what were then the colonial colonies of the Americas. So there are those sorts of things that kind of go on, and that's got a historical tradition. This idea that maybe there are certain I mean, you didn't name what kinds of gender or race or sexual preference
it doesn't really matter,
and get away with anything these days. But it sounds like what you're talking about, Michael, is a sense of political correctness.
Yes.
That people are afraid to speak against people who were otherwise seen to be different. But actually, the way that a lot of the structures work in the United States, unfortunately, still is to marginalize a lot of people in really significant ways. I mean, let me give you an example of you say you're a Marine. Well, let me give you an example of somebody I interviewed in the book. His name is James Yee. He was a West Point graduate. He's of Chinese descent, and he was a chaplain in the U.S. Army. He served at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, as the Muslim chaplain. He's a Muslim. He was a Muslim chaplain, and his way of practicing Americanness maybe wasn't exactly like John Wayne's kind of go off and conquer new territories, but it was to kind of uphold some of these traditional values that people associate with the United States, like the right to religious accommodation, the freedom of to worship as they see fit, and also for James, and I'm sure you understand this as well with your military background, the humane treatment of prisoners. These things were important to him. And he was serving honorably in his job. He was getting accommodations for good service. And one day he was going home on home leave. He thought everything was normal, but when he stepped back on U.S. territory from Cuba, which is where Guantanamo Bay is, he was arrested. He was charged with aiding and abetting the enemy. Somebody even referred to him as a, quote, Chinese Taliban, unquote. His family didn't know where he was. He just disappeared. He was put in solitary confinement for 76 days. He was threatened by the military prosecutors with the death penalty for things that, he just simply had no idea what was going on. And why he had no idea what was going on is because there was no case to answer. The charges were eventually dropped, and James' record was cleared. And his military career, of course, was in ruins because of this. He did receive an honorable discharge. But what we have here is a situation where what the way James tells his story, all he can think of, the reason why he was victimized in this way was not because he wasn't being a good patriotic American, but was because he appeared to the people on base at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, as having too much in common with the Muslim prisoners, and it was his job to actually associate with them, and also because he was of ethnic Chinese origin.
Sure.
So I think when we go back, and you also made the point that we've lost this definition of what it means to be an American. I mean, I just don't think that's. First of all, I don't think there ever is a kind of fixed definition of Americanness. I think it's something that we invent all the time, and one of the things that's very important, one of the reasons why it's important for me to make these films and write this book, is because we need to visit all of the complicated ways that we invest that notion of Americanness with meaning, so that we can be responsible for it, and we can think about actually what we want it to mean, not just in kind of abstract terms, like I was speaking about earlier, the inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but how we actually make freedom and equality under the law something that all U.S. citizens actually have a right to in practice.
Now, okay, let me qualify it by this, and one of the most important things that we can talk about here is this, and we'll talk about definition. My personal family, my own personal family, in my family there's Filipino, there's African American, there's Alaska Native, there is Mexican. They're all Americans. I don't see any difference in color, style, creed, or anything else. And if you want to talk about political correctness, if there is a category of person that has been put up against the wall, I think it's been the Caucasian white male. Because if you take a look at it, all we have to do is open our mouth and we're in trouble and we're racist and we kill babies, and I mean the list goes on and on. So when there's got to be equality, it's got to be across the board. It can't just be towards a particular race, an ethnicity, or a gender. And I have seen picture after picture. I've seen what's going on with La Raza and some of these places in Los Angeles and in Southern California, where I've seen the pictures where they don't show them on television, where the middle finger is stuck up in the air and this and that of you, America, and it belongs to us and whatever. You see, there's a tremendous amount of that underlying a lot of these politically correct agendas that are going on. So we have to say, what is it? Go to Texas. Texas right now denies that there was ever an Alamo. If you go back and you check Santa Anna's Army, those guys were nasty. I mean, they were bad. But we don't look at it that way today. We're always looking for the poor victim that's being picked on. That we have to get away from, because that in and of itself dilutes us. It gives us that lack of strength. You want to kill this, not you personally, but you want to kill this country, you do it by divisions. And you look at what's happening in the last couple, 3 years. The genders are divided. The sexual orientation is divided. Everybody's after somebody else. You got kids running around having fun and destroying things. That's what's going on now. That's not America. But that's what happens here.
Well, but the problem is that, that's a very interesting statement that you end on, right? That's not America, but it's part of the United States of America, and it's precisely. I'm not sure we're on a different page here in the sense of, the question is, well, what should it mean to be an American? We have these ideal principles that we hold ourselves to, and we should be accountable to them. And I'm not, I would still make the argument that what you want to call political correctness is, I still think that's a response to lots of people who have traditionally had histories of not enjoying the same rights in the United States as they should, as other citizens should. But the larger point here is about the question of tolerance, right? If we're a tolerant nation, if we understand ourselves to be a tolerant nation and a tolerant people, we have to be very clear about how tolerance actually very easily slips into being intolerance. Now, you and I may disagree about how that happens and who's being intolerant of whom, but we might agree that that's something that happens. When I think of the relationship between tolerance and intolerance, I think of it almost like the relationship between laughing and crying. They're so very close to one another that they can change very quickly. And the reason is that tolerance can become intolerance is because if you say, to somebody, if I say to you, I tolerate you, okay? What I've done is I've put myself in a position of being able to judge whether or not you are allowed to carry on, and you deserve the right to carry on as you do. I put myself in a superior position. And what that means also is that I reserve the right to stop tolerating you at any time.
Yes.
And that's not necessarily the way we want to practice tolerance in the United States, whether it's historically or whether we look to the future, after September 11 or now after the 10th anniversary of September 11.
But Cynthia,
the problem is that, if I reserve the right to stop tolerating you at any time, that what happens is that it doesn't matter who you are, whatever category, whether you happen to be, a Muslim of Chinese descent, or whether you happen to be, white Anglo-Saxon Christian, depending on how fear and terrorism, fear and patriotism get aligned, what you could find is that you're on the wrong side of that, notion of being tolerated or not tolerated at any time. I mean, it could happen to any of us. And let me give you another example of somebody who, I interviewed who actually found himself. This is a white Anglo middle-class academic, an artist, not a Muslim. His name is Steve Kurtz, and what he does is he does art practice that tries to get people to think about difficult questions of biotechnology, things like, genetically modified foods or the uses of human DNA. He goes to sleep, one night with his wife, Hope. He wakes up the next morning and Hope is dead. He calls 911. The police come and they find, that Hope has died, but they also find that Steve has a biology lab in his house. Now, he explains that, this is part of his art practice and that he only uses benign bacteria in his art practice. And to prove this, he even dips his finger into a petri dish and puts it in his mouth and licks it to show that, everything is harmless. But even so, and even this white Anglo-Saxon, middle-class male, he's arrested on suspicion of murdering his wife. And then this is the one I don't get at all. He's also arrested on suspicion of bioterrorism.
Okay.
Now, this happened even though the coroner said that his wife, Hope, died of natural causes.
Well, Cynthia, let me hold. Cynthia, let me hold.
This,
yeah.
And even though the FBI test confirmed that all the substances in his house were benign.
Okay, let me hold you up for a minute. Let me hold you up for a minute because I think you're making a very important point. But I want to counter it with something. We're starting to run out of time, but I want to make sure we counter this. All right? Absolutely. But just recently there was a kid that it was in I think it was in Florida. It was all over the news this morning. They found explosives in all over his room. They found detonators, and he had plans to make to go in and kill about 33 to 40 people in his own particular high school. When we have a world like that, you bet when you find that kind of chemistry, you check it out before anything can happen. Because why let go on?
Check it out, and if it's dangerous,
suspicion of.
That's absolutely true. But if it's not dangerous, and when your own tests confirm that it's not dangerous, you don't actually bring him up on Mickey Mouse charges that last for 4 years. I mean, the charges of bioterrorism and murdering his wife had to be dropped quite early,
sure.
But then they brought charges of wire fraud and mail fraud against him because they were just looking for something to put him away with.
Okay, that's wrong. But wait, Cynthia, that's wrong.
That doesn't bring security to the United States. That means we're changing our, we're using our resources in ways that actually aren't helpful.
Tell the administration.
I'm not saying, I'm not making an argument about, anything goes and everyone is wonderful. I'm saying that, that the way that intolerance has been practiced and the way that people have found themselves on the wrong side of the with us or against us war on terror has been about how we've interpreted patriotism through fear. And it's those particular cases, not, the whole wide range of whether we've got school shooters or school bombers, but those particular cases about how U.S. citizens' access to their rights have become conditional because of the way that patriotism and fear have been aligned.
Okay.
And I think that, the bumper sticker slogan of September 11, the 10th anniversary, is "We will never forget." And I don't think we should. I think we should think about what happened on that day and certainly mourn the loss of life that occurred on that day.
No question.
But we also have to remember the stuff that we don't really want to remember, and maybe stuff we didn't even realize happened. Maybe, we don't remember it because we never knew it in the first place. Things like the way that tolerance becomes intolerance, how patriotism and fear, work together, and how actually any one of us could find ourselves in these situations of intolerance if we're not careful. Or even if we are careful. I mean, I don't think Steve Kirsch did anything that wasn't careful, and he ended up in this position.
No, by the way, we're going to have to...
I think that these are important lessons for us to take away when we think about who we are as U.S. citizens and who we want to become as a nation and a people in the future.
All right, let me close it off with this. I think tolerance should be thrown out the window, and I think the word should be replaced with respect. There is power in respect. Tolerance is garbage because people misuse it, abuse it, and cause a lot of problems with it. So I think the word respect would trump anything that tolerance can do. And with that,
we definitely need to move beyond tolerance. And if by respect, what you're talking about is a situation in which equality and freedom is not based on some kind of hierarchical judgment about whether you deserve it or not.
Got it.
But it's something that we just, initially, you give to people only, and only take it away when there's actual evidence that there's some security problem here or some risk, and we have to be very careful about how those things get defined. Then sure, I agree with that.
Yeah. By the way, let me give you. We have to go, but let me give you my last definition of an American. I am an American, and I love my country, and I don't even know you, but I love you. Okay. I would respect you. If we totally disagreed, I'd open a door for you. If you were in trouble, I would be right there to help. And that, I think, is what an American is. And I don't care if you were green, I'd say the same thing to you.
Well, I think, again, that the idea is that difference shouldn't be something that, interferes with how people treat one another humanely. And whether that's as U.S. citizens or as citizens, how the United States treats people outside of the United States. But, in the context of the U.S., that's,
I hear you. Hey, Cynthia, we got to go. Do you have a website we can find you at?
I've got a Facebook page called I Am an American. If you just Google I Am an American at Facebook, it's there. I've got another website that I'm going to launch in September called, it's www.iamanamericanproject.com, and that will have all of the films on it and some of the images and text from the book. And the book is I Am an American, Filming the Fear of Difference, which can be found in the United States at the University of Chicago Press, or for people in Britain from Intellect Books. And all of the films are going to end up as part of they've been invited to be part of the permanent collection of the September 11 Memorial Museum that's being built at Ground Zero. So they'll be available online as soon as they can get them cataloged, and they'll be available on site next year when the museum opens.
Dynamite. Cynthia Weber, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Take care. Good night.